Hi all. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about something that's shaping up to be one of the highlights of the year for independent optometry. It's the OptiPro Roadshow 2025. And if you're an avid listener of the podcast, I'm sure you're very passionate about the future of eye care. If that's the case, the Roadshow is something you want to be a part of. This event series will take place in Sydney on the 26th of September, Brisbane on the 10th of October, and Perth on the 17th of October. Expect supplier showcases, keynote presentations, networking, and tailored content that speaks directly to the challenge and opportunities in independent practices today. Spots are filling fast, so register at optipro.com.au.
Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. Brought to you by Opticare. In each episode, we bring together leading eye care, optical and business professionals to share valuable insights, practical tips, and the latest trends shaping the optical business landscape. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore innovative strategies for practice growth, patient care, and business success in the eye care industry. Whether you're starting your career, managing a practice, or just looking to stay ahead of the field, The Focused View is your source for inspiration and knowledge.
In today's episode, we're joined by Adrian Vecchio, an optometrist and owner of the Eye Collective, an independent practice in Victoria, known for its focus on behavioural optometry, vision therapy, and specialty contact lens care. Adrian's path to where he is today wasn't a straight line. From his early days in Noosa, working alongside a mentor who opened his eyes to behavioural optometry, to returning to Melbourne and eventually meeting a practice owner who would set him on the path to ownership. Adrian's career has been shaped by curiosity, openness to opportunity, and a willingness to back himself. In our conversation, we explored how he's built a thriving independent practice by aligning his clinical passions with a commercially sustainable model, the lessons learnt along the way, and why it's so important to pursue a path that excites you. We also discussed how to identify and grow niche services, the balance between head and heart in business decisions, and the mindset needed to keep evolving as an independent. Whether you're an optometrist, a practice owner, or someone just starting to think about ownership, this is a conversation full of ideas, inspiration, and practical takeaways. So let's get into it. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, Michael.
Yeah, really excited to have you on as well and to discuss the topic of today and the things that we're going to go through. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, professional background, a bit about you, and I guess how you got involved with the Eye Collective?
Yeah. So it's a little bit scary. I've been an optom for 15 years now, which I often have this chat with uni students that are patients of mine. I'm like, I feel like I'm only just a couple of years out. And then I crunched the numbers the other day and it's been 15, which is a bit of a wild ride. So yeah, graduated all the way back then from Melbourne Uni and took a first job in Noosa. So went straight to the retirement life and lived the absolute dream up there for 3 years, worked in a great independent practice. And that's actually where my first inkling into I guess, behavioural optometry came from. And there was a guy there, he just worked a couple of days a week in the practice and he was able to kind of answer these questions that I'd be like, as a new grad, why is this person's eyes doing this? And he'd have these answers that I'd never heard of before. And he was a little bit kooky, but the stuff he did kind of worked. And that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So it kind of sat in the back of my mind. Moved back to Melbourne, worked for IQ for a little while, for about 3 years. And then after that, I met Norm Russo, who was the previous owner. So it was called Russo Optometry previously. I met him at the Optometry Golf Day and we just sort of hit it off and got chatting. And over a couple of years, then, we kept running into each other at the golf day. And one year he was like, I think I've got a job going. Are you interested? And from the very first one, he said, look, in a few years, I'm going to need someone to take over my business and you might be the person. So he called it probably 3 or 4 years in advance. And then we just sort of kept in touch and eventually said, look, I've got a job going, do you want to come over?
And that led you to where you are today.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a theme with, the chats that I've been having lately with regards to independence and independent ownership, particularly. And a lot of them stem from conversations and networking and being open to those conversations. And I guess it's made example with regards to your experience too, from that point of view. It was a chance meeting and obviously the conversation was had and you were open to it. And it's led to that path. And obviously we're going to speak about that during the course of today and a little bit more, with regards to that behavioural concept. And just, I wanted to pull you up on one thing. You said kooky. When we talk about behavioural optometry, there is, I guess, there is a particular way about that. Was that the sort of stuff you observed when you were up in Noosa in those early days? And can you speak to what, I guess, from a layman's term point of view, what that was and how you made sense of it a little bit later on?
Yeah, so the practice I worked in was just a traditional optometry practice. We just did a little bit of everything, but just a couple of days a week. This guy, his name was Darren, came down, and he had a practice that was like up in the hills in Noosa. And he was just a bit of an out there sort of character, but he was very passionate about what he did, and his patients just seemed to get fantastic results. Right. And so when I went through Melbourne Uni, the head of education at the time was very anti-behavioural optometry. Like we were told it's the worst thing you can ever do. There's no evidence. Don't do it. And so I came out thinking this behavioural optometry is just absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And then met this guy, and I was like, yeah, he's pretty left field, but the stuff he's doing, once he explained it, I was like, oh, it's not really that crazy. It kind of makes sense. And he's getting results doing stuff that I don't know about, and I'm doing things the traditional way and it's not working. So I'm sort of like, well, there's got to be something there. Like, even if it's not in the literature or whatever, he's getting results and I'm not. So I figure there's something.
Yeah, and I guess basing it from that patient experience and the feedback that you were seeing, I guess firsthand.
Yeah.
Was ownership was that something you always aimed for? Like, in terms of owning a practice and being in that loop? And I guess, how did that come about? Well, we know how it came about, but how did that thought foster, I guess, in those early years for you?
Yeah, I think it's maybe just my personality type, in that maybe I'm not good at following other people's rules. I kind of like doing things my own way, and always think that I know the best way of doing things.
Yep.
That's most of the time not the case, but I feel like it is. So yeah, I think, and maybe I guess grew up in my family, like my mum had her own business, my grandparents were farmers, so it was a long history in the family of everyone kind of doing things their own way, and so I guess it just sort of sat in the back of my mind as something that I'd always liked to do. Equally, I guess 15 years ago when I graduated, Specsavers had only been in the market for a year. Right. So I guess going into it, that was, a lot of people went into independent ownership back then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting point that you raised there. And it's definitely something that we're observing, or I'm observing, with regards to the last, say, 10 to 12 years. And I guess you can include the 15 years into that, where prior to that sort of, 2009, 10, 11, 12 period, it was probably more prevalent to walk into that particular path or have that on the mind. But once the corporates came in, and obviously the massive push that they have in the universities, when you speak to grads that have graduated 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's all corporate. And then that's what they come to know. And it's sort of, it's like, what's the independent path, and who's talking about that, and how do I get involved in that? Because I guess, and what we'll speak about later on, it highlights I think the importance of the independent path and what it allows you to do. And like you mentioned, taking instruction and all that sort of stuff, it allows you to create the environment you want for your patients. And I think that's really empowering as an optometrist that spent so long studying, and, especially patient care is front and center. And not to say that it's not at corporates, but it's a little bit different from that point of view. So you never really had that corporate mindset in mind. So I'm not going to sort of go down the path of if that was an option and what made you go between that and independence. It feels like that was something through the family and through, just your upbringing was always going to, come around at some point.
Yeah.
But what were some of those early lessons or challenges that you got when you took over a practice, and how did that sort of come to light? Like, if you can speak to that, I guess that transition from, working in a practice to becoming an owner of a practice, and for you, how that sort of developed.
Yeah. I'd like to think our example is a pretty good case example of how a partnership and then a buyout can work.
Mm.
I was very lucky. So Norm Russo, when he first asked me to come in, I went around to his house and we just sort of sat and had a chat for a couple of hours, and he kind of, outlined what he was looking for. And what we sort of agreed on was, I'll come and work just as an optom and a practice manager. So sort of come in and be optom practice manager for a year or two, and basically just see how well we get along and kind of go, okay, are we on the same page? And thankfully, we just really hit it off. We're both, I think, keen to try out new ideas. We're not scared to try different things. We don't like just standing still and doing nothing. And after about that 18 months, then I became 50% owner of the business.
Okay.
And we were in partnership for 5 years. And the way we structured that, and this might be interesting for if there's someone listening who is in this sort of process or thinking about what to do. So we actually structured it so that after 5 years, we would have a buy-sell agreement. So if I wanted to buy the other half, he had to sell. And if he wanted to sell, I had to buy.
Got it.
And we actually fixed the price. So we actually fixed the price from the day I bought it. The price was the same to buy the second half of the business.
Right.
Because he'd seen other cases where people had said, we'll revalue the business. And it had gone either one of two ways. The person who was going to buy the second half did no work for 5 years, so the value stayed low, or they worked their butt off, but then they had to pay more for their work. So he was sort of like, look, let's just fix the value now. If you work your butt off and the value goes up, you get a bargain. If you don't work hard, you have to pay more, and sort of go from there. And to me, that seemed like a pretty fair option.
Absolutely. I mean, and to me too, it does. And I definitely want to unpack that a little bit. But I think for the context of today's chat, we're going to speak about sort of behavioural and specialising and niching. But there is 100% something in that conversation. I'm more than happy to, if you're open to it, to have a chat about that too for another episode, because I do feel like that pathway to independent ownership, it is so vast and it is so broad, and there is no one way whether, an optom can get the funds themselves, whether it's a self-funded, i.e. the finance is coming from the person that's selling it, whether it's, starting a greenfield practice. So I feel like there are so many options, but a lot of it comes down to speaking to people that have been down that path, and sort of success leaves clues, and identifying, like you've mentioned there, the agreement and the little things that you've, factored in there. Obviously, it's been very strategic. And I think with that strategy comes the success. And so I definitely want to unpack that if you're open to doing that a little bit of a later time.
Yeah, always happy to.
Yeah, cool. So I guess if we sort of step back now into, identifying opportunities and I guess choosing to specialise, you'd mentioned the behavioural optometry experience that you had sort of out of uni, but your practice in itself, it offers a range of niche services. And again, was it something that existed when you purchased it, or was it something that you incorporated into the practice?
The practice has always had behavioural as sort of being the foundation of it, and then over time, norms added in the other aspects. And I guess when I started in, then we really started to solidify more of the different subspecialties.
Yeah. And what made you pursue those specialisations, like beyond the sort of standard, refraction? What was it that really sort of motivated you to, I guess, get more inquisitive with those and expand those? And how did you determine what was right?
Yeah, so I think it's all about doing what you love. And I have that inquisitive mind and I think that, like most optoms, I hate not knowing how to do something. Like I was like, oh, myopia control, that sounds interesting. So then I'll sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole in that area. Ortho K, I'll go down that rabbit hole. Oh, dry, I'll go down that rabbit hole. And we're lucky enough that because we're a 3 consulting room practice, we've got more of that patient flow, which allows you to then have your different niches. And I think that's a great thing with behavioural optometry, is that you get a lot of kids in, so you can certainly build on in those areas. We've got the vision therapy side of things as well. So yeah, there's lots of exciting paths to go down, but I think it's all about just being curious and following your passion, what you're interested in, and go for it.
And when we look at, I guess, that niching aspect, I mean, for yourself, what are some of the tips that you'd have for a practice that's looking to, go down that particular path, from the experiences that you've had in obviously picking up what was already established and then obviously taking that to another level? What would be some tips that you'd have for someone or a practice or a business in that particular frame of mind going, I'm thinking to expand more on this? What would be a first step for them?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 ways to think about it. You can either go, this is what my current demographic is, and I think there's this specialty area in that demographic that could really be good for my business. The one thing you have to be careful of is that it aligns with something that you love.
Right.
So you can easily go down the rabbit hole of going, I've got a whole heap of old people who I think would be great for dry eye, and you invest in all the equipment and then you start doing dry eye and find out you hate it and you actually don't enjoy doing it. And actually your passion was kids vision. And so I think you've got to try and find that balance of, okay, what do I love doing? Because that's what you're going to put all your time and energy into. Whereas if you kind of go, this is good for my patient base, but actually I don't really want to do it. Sometimes you can set up a clinic, say it's dry, you set up a dry clinic, the people come, but actually you start resenting doing it. And it can be a tricky balance. So I'd say probably follow your heart first, but make a bit of a business plan as well.
Yeah. It's sort of like, you got the head and the heart there. So maybe, the head is telling you one thing, which is, there's a business opportunity here, but the heart maybe doesn't necessarily agree the same thing, but you still pursue it. And specifically when time gets difficult, or times if they do get difficult, if you follow, the head too much, you may be left in a position where it's like, well, why am I doing this? And that leads to a whole other set of, I guess, circumstances.
Yeah. And if I can give you an example of that. So
Please.
One is I actually underdid the CASA training to be able to do aviation medicals.
Yep.
And I did them because I was like, this will be great. We've got airports around us and we'll get everyone in. They have to buy 2 pairs of glasses, excellent for business. And after about 3 months of doing aviation exams, I was like, I hate doing these things.
Right.
I'm not you got to, it's super details and you've got to do things across, their portal and your notes. And after a little bit, I was just like, every time I saw an aviation booked in my diary, I'd just be like, oh my God, not another one. And after I persisted for, I think, 4 years. And after that, I just told the staff, I was like, no, I'm not doing them anymore. I'm calling it. One of my other staff does it. And I said, look, if you like doing them, you can. If you want to stop.
Yeah.
I'm not fussed by them. And I've never been happier, honestly, since even if they made money, I just did not enjoy them. And so best thing I've ever done is stop doing them.
Yeah. That sort of, it was going to be one of my questions was there a service that didn't, in this instance, it didn't not gain traction, but I guess it didn't from the point of view of what you want to get out of it. And that experience specifically, what do you think you learn out of that?
Yeah, I think it really is that following your heart and kind of going, do I find this interesting? And I thought I would. And I guess the other thing is, if you go down a path and decide you don't like it, don't be scared to change. Don't feel like, okay, just because you've got something, that's what you have to do. If you feel like, you start it and it's good and it changes, if you can delegate it. So I could delegate it to my colleague and she still quite likes doing them. So that's where I've got that ability to go, great, that's now your area. You look after that. And that kind of empowers her to, grow that side of things. And it allows me to focus on more fun stuff.
Yeah, I think A, not being afraid to try something, and then B, if it doesn't work out the way you want, not being afraid to sort of saying, well, this is not right for me for whatever reason. And, obviously in your case, you had the ability to delegate, but at the same time, if someone didn't, it still wouldn't be a reason why you would still pursue it in any case. And working perhaps to that, I think that does say a lot. And I feel like, there's a lot that can be taken out of that. Okay, if we focus specifically on behavioural optometry as a business model and how that's sort of rolled out for the practice, because I think it's a big area. It's an area that seems to be gaining traction, especially in the independent space. People are saying, things that have happened sort of, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago might have been slightly alternative. But as students are coming through now and there's a little bit more, I guess, emphasis on it and the value of it, it seems to be really creeping up as an area, again, specifically that independents are really gravitating towards and learning more about. And I guess it can be misunderstood. How do you define behavioural optometry and how does it work in your practice?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there really has been a nice evolution of behavioural optometry where it's being seen now as, quite a valuable asset to the optometry sector, rather than some sort of fringe side thing that kooky people do. The way I define it is just doing really good optometry. So it's looking at how the person functions in their world and then helping find solutions to what they do in their everyday life. But that's kind of, I guess, going beyond standard refractions. So it's going more than just can you read the bottom line. It's how easy can you do it? How comfortable can you do it? How well can you change focus? How well can you move through space? How well can you move your eyes? How well can you process information? Combining all of those things in together.
And would you say, and maybe you may not have experience in this, but with students and it coming through now at uni, you said when you did it, it was almost, again, it was obviously the particular educator that was taking you through at the time. Is it becoming more and more common with younger optoms to be something that is less kooky, I guess, and I use that for lack of a better term, but that being so different, is it becoming a bit more common with regards to your colleagues and the discussions that you have, between them and the younger ones specifically, and perhaps the older ones too?
Yeah, so we take on students in the practice, and they're definitely much more open to it now, which I think is, at Melbourne Uni at least, there's Christine Nyaku, who has been a behavioural optometrist for many years, and she's in charge of the paediatrics side of things.
Yeah.
And also, I think ACBO, the Australasian College of Behavioural Optometry, has done a fantastic job in really trying to build up the evidence base behind things.
Sure.
They've, definitely in the last 5, 7, 10 years have really put in so much emphasis on getting the data that matches all of the stuff they've been doing, which then makes it much more acceptable. And even as a practitioner, like, I love being able to say, I do this and there's evidence behind it, rather than just like, oh, I do this because I think it works and someone told me. I want to be able to, I still want to be an evidence-based person. And I think they've done a fantastic job in really bringing that to the fore.
Yeah, and I think as it becomes a little bit more common, I think, those evidence-based, ideas are developed and enhanced and in turn obviously strengthen the whole, category from that point of view.
Yeah.
If someone's looking at introducing it into their practice, what sort of tips would you have for them, in terms of incorporating it into your practice in a practical way, and also then speaking to your patients about it too? Because let's say it's an established practice and they've never really done it, but they're about to introduce it. That would obviously come with a set of challenges. And what advice would you have to anyone that's thinking about doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's one of those ones, I would say you need to undertake some courses first, rather than just sort of saying, oh, I do behavioural optometry now. You need to do some courses so that you understand what that involves and what that looks like. Yeah. And then I would start small. And the easiest way is using your existing patient base, and especially with kids, and kind of going, okay, we're now offering these extra kids services, and starting to talk up to your current patients. Hey, I've just undertaken this extra course. I think I've got some other things I can do to help you. I want to get you back for a special test to do something else. And then that way you're kind of showing them that, hey, I've got this extra skill that I've got. And hopefully then you're solving their child's problem in a different way to the way you had before. And then they talk to the other parents in the school ground, and then it sort of grows from there.
Yeah. I mean, I like when you say solving the problem. And I think so much of this industry, when it comes to the independent space, is focused on solving problems that, patients are having when it comes to their vision and the associated implications that poor vision can lead to. And what I like about behavioural is that it has that aspect of looking at things a bit more holistically, perhaps. Yeah. And it's sort of saying, well, vision can affect, learning, it can affect attention, it can affect all these things. And I feel like, with the behavioural model, there is that opportunity to further make it more of an importance with regards to understanding the patient, again, in a more holistic way. I don't know if I'm right in assuming that or saying that, or what your thoughts on that would be.
No, I think that's pretty fair. And look, I think one of the best things about doing it is that you'll often get patients that have been to a couple of other optometrists with a problem, and then they come to you, and then because you sort of approach it from a different way, you're able to solve the problem slightly differently. And the amount of times that you get parents going, oh, I wish I had have come to you beforehand, because it was actually more of a vision-related learning thing, or actually they needed vision therapy because they had convergence insufficiency that someone hadn't picked up, or, something like that. Yeah. And just being able to add real quality of life to kids rather than just clarity through a pair of glasses. It's kind of going, like I had a kid the other day that has been just tripping over all the time. He kept bumping into stuff, and he's about 8 or 9, and like he's pretty coordinated, played basketball. Mom's like, he trips over about 50 times a day. Like he's always in the sick bay, he's always bruised. Did some tests, did some vision therapy for him, and like when I saw him at his 8-week review, Mum's like, he hasn't fallen over in the last 4 weeks. And that's something that's like, it wasn't glasses. It was just something that just needed a bit of time. And we've changed his life now.
That's insane.
To something as simple as a few sessions of vision therapy. So when you get those ones, they feel pretty good.
Yeah, that's an awesome example, I think, and it shows the power of it all. You've mentioned that there are techniques and strategies with behavioural optometry, and it feels like it really depends on the optometrist, their experience, what they've had success with. And it seems to be, I guess in some ways, I'd say alternative, but it's obviously becoming more and more common, as we've mentioned, with ACBO and more of the evidence-based stuff. But there are probably some extremities, I would believe, as well. And some of the stories that you hear with regards to aspects of whether it's, prism or different things, with regards to how to do things. And again, it's not saying anything's right or wrong. That's definitely not. But how do you, and your philosophy, how do you handle staying, I guess, I wouldn't say, grounded, but I use that for lack of a better term. But how do you stay grounded to the core science while remaining open to those alternative approaches and not getting too alternative?
Yeah, it's a fine line sometimes. And I think it comes back to that education. So undertaking the education so that you understand why you do different things.
Yeah.
To use your PRISM example, it's something that I didn't do a lot of previously. And then when I undertook the advanced certificate in neuro-optometric care, for post-concussion, they then kind of explained the science of different types of prisms and why they work and why they're effective. And now I use them when I need to for non-concussion cases because I understand the reason why.
Yeah.
And I think through behavioural optometry, I've learned just to be a lot more open-minded about different things. And I'll hear lots of different things along the way. And I'll just keep them in the back of my mind and go, there might be that specific person somewhere where, this is a bit left field, but let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of times where I've watched a lecture by more of a left field optometrist and was like, geez, that's pretty out there. It was basically, I'll even tell you, it was basically putting minus 0.25 SIL at either 95 or 100 degrees, slightly off. And I was like, I don't know how this can make any difference to anyone.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with a really severe post-concussion patient and nothing else was sort of working. And I was like, let's just try this. And I put it on her and I'd tried yolk prisms. I'd tried all different scripts. I put it on her and she was like, oh my God, what have you done? I can just focus. And I was like, okay, I don't even really understand it. And she's got a tinted lens, which makes a big difference. But this just putting 0.25 SIL like that changed her entire life. And it's one that do I do it on everyone? Absolutely not. But every now and again, I try it. And then if it makes a difference, I'm like, okay, let's roll with it.
Yeah, I guess that speaks to your mindset and that curiosity component and being able to filter in the different perspectives and then channel that into, I guess your patient experience and your patients obviously are having some really good results with that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think, look, I'm open. I told her that I was like, look, this is pretty out there and I don't 100% understand why, but let's give it a shot. And she's like, I was like, if it doesn't work, it's no big deal. I'll just remake your glasses. And she's like, no, they are the best pair of glasses I've ever had.
Wow.
So I feel like as long as you're open and honest and kind of say, look, this is a bit left field, but let's give it a shot. And if it helps, let's roll with it.
Yeah.
And I feel like most people are pretty receptive to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can sleep at night because I'm not selling snake oil or something because I'm telling them up front, I'm like, look, this is a bit left field, but if it works for you, let's do it. If not, I'll back you up and I'll refund it or sort it out or whatever.
And obviously you've gone through your processes, so you haven't jumped to that straight away. It's like, we've tried this, we've tried that, we've tried this. Let's just do something now just to give it a go to see if it helps. And obviously if you give them that reassurance, if it doesn't, that's fine. We'll keep working on it. And when you're working to that approach, hopefully this doesn't come across the wrong way, but you're not really thinking about the money, right? You're not thinking about the sale. And I feel like there's an element of that too when it comes to behavioural optometry where you're not necessarily, it's not financially motivated, right? I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that you want to provide a more holistic service. How do you balance the clinical side of that and the time that's needed and required to the commercial aspect of the business or the business side of the business when it comes to offering the service that obviously is then viable and can sustain the practice?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think I'm lucky to have come in off the back of Norm's business mind, I guess, in that he had done really well at structuring this and gave me lots of great tips along the way. So one example would be vision therapy. When you do a lot of the courses, they're based out of the States and they're kind of going, okay, you've got to do 24, 36 weeks of vision therapy, which work really well when you have the United States healthcare model, like in their insurance. But it's a harder sell in Australia. Some practitioners do it and it works really well for them. And it's kind of going, well, to do 24 sessions of vision therapy, you've got to charge a lot of money to make that worth your while, is in relevance to selling a pair of glasses. So the way I've always been really careful to structure it is I block out certain times in my diary that are for vision therapy and then make sure that we don't stray away from that.
Right.
Using vision therapy as an example. So, because it can be quite easy to go, oh, I'll do this person vision therapy, this one. All of a sudden you've got half your book is full of vision therapy and you're not making any money. So I tend to just be really tactical in the way that I do things and kind of go, okay, if I've got an optometrist doing vision therapy, make sure it's at a certain time when we can have the other optometrists doing more clinical work.
Yeah.
The other thing is charging for your time. So people often come to you because they see you as having this, in inverted commas, specialty service. And it hit me one day. I went and saw my osteo, and my osteo charges $130 or something like that. And I have to go and see him every 6 weeks. And I was like, why does he get to charge me $130 every 6 weeks? And I feel guilty about charging someone above the Medicare fee once a year.
Yeah.
And once that hit me, I was like, hang on a minute, we're thinking about this all wrong. I'm doing this specialty service. And I was like, I would argue that vision is a lot more important than, not having a sore neck.
Yeah.
It's something Norm had always done. He'd always sort of billed, when it was eligible above the Medicare amount. And then once that sort of clicked in, then I had no issues charging for my time. Just having that thought process and then being able to communicate that with my optoms. And now none of my optoms ever feel guilty about charging for consultations, because I'm just like, well, my time is equally as valuable as an osteo or any other allied health person. So I'm going to charge for it appropriately.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show the power of the mindset. And this is probably more, your private billing versus, your bulk billing conversation. And I feel like you've got to find that, whatever that is, that narrative in your mind that allows you to justify that. Because once you do that, you overcome that hurdle. Then it's almost like, well, why didn't I start doing that sooner? But it's a realization I think you've got to come to. And depending on the demographics, and it can be quite a contentious point with people, because people that, for example, bulk bill and don't want to, private bill, they almost feel like I can't do it because it's almost, and to imply that I can and that I'm not, it's almost like an offensive, it's like how my competitor across the road isn't doing it. And if they're not doing it, I can't do it. And it's almost like, well, fair enough, that's how you think about it, and that's what's going to translate. But I think in your example and your story, I think it's an empowering one. And also, for people listening, it's just about how do you get your mind to that point of justifying why you are doing it. And that's probably a conversation in its own right as well.
That's another one. But it is very powerful once you make it. Yeah. And I think it's a bit of the classic build it and they will come. Like the patients will find you.
Yeah.
They accept, okay, I'm going to have to pay to see this person. And what I always say whenever we're hiring a new employee is I'm like, people pay to come and see us and they go past other optometrists to come and see us. So it means our standards have to be really high. So it does come with that, in that, I don't feel like we can, just smack someone in and out in 15 minutes. It's like, no, we've got to spend the full time and really earn it. But I feel like if you get that balance right, it can work really well.
Well, that's it. And that model allows for you to do that because you're obviously being remunerated accordingly for that as well. So, it gives you the time and it facilitates that opportunity. And I feel like that's the other powerful part of it, which then in turn also attracts the customer that you want. And, the one thing that I'm learning as time goes on is you can't be everyone to everyone, or everything to everyone. You've got your core, clients that you like to interact with and deal with that want to value and appreciate you. And I feel like that's what you also attract too. I mean, there are people that are designed to be a Specsaver customer, and not to say that they can't also be a private, schools customer, but everyone's different. And it's about finding your audience and finding your market. And it sounds like with this model, you can also do that as well.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. And, every now and again, if we're a bit quiet or something like that, I'd be like, maybe we need to discount or whatever. And they're like, no, I just have to stick true to what we do and know that we just have to work really hard to provide the absolute best service for people. And there's always going to be a market for people who want that time and energy and, different specialisation or a different mindset, and just got to work really hard to keep those people happy.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love it. And I can totally see how that works then when you've explained it like that. You mentioned earlier on that, behavioural care brings in a younger demographic, right?
Yeah.
And obviously because of that, it's allowed you to then focus on other areas too, naturally, whether it's myopia control or, ortho-K or the other areas that you've developed. How has that then evolved for you? And is that something that happened naturally, or did you have to be strategic in how you rolled that out?
It's something that it does sort of happen organically, but equally I think because if you go into behavioural optometry, you kind of have to like kids. So you're already seeing so many kids' vision, and all of a sudden, because you get known as being a an optometrist who's good with kids, all of a sudden you get myopic kids and you get kids who want different things. And so then it only naturally makes sense to go, well, I better be really good at myopia control as well. So then you undertake the extra courses and training and things so that you've got that, I guess, again, expertise in myopia. And again, through that, I developed a love of hard lenses. Through uni, I didn't understand them, but since starting Ortho-K and in our practice, because we do have keratoconics and do specialty lenses as well, learning more about that, it's sort of a bit of another little passion area of mine. And it's probably the next area I'm sort of looking at going into. So it then, it kind of just, it fits the mold really nicely, because you might have, say, a sibling who, has to wear glasses for reading or something like that, or you've done some perceptual work with, but their older brother is myopic. And so then you go, okay, well, I can sort you out with myopia management, and while I'm sorting you out with, something else, with vision therapy or something like that. So it allows you to cater to all members of the family, whereas if we had one kid we could look after, but actually, sorry, your brother who's myopic, you need to go to the place down the road, then it doesn't work as well. So it actually kind of really solidifies your perception to the public that, hey, you're great with kids, and it doesn't matter what aspect of kids' vision there is, you've got it all covered.
Yeah, and that's empowering in its own right, because you can offer a more comprehensive service, and the opportunity that's sort of tied in with that is, it goes without saying.
And it makes your day really exciting. So we've got a student with us at the moment, and I was like, we saw a 2-year-old, we saw an Ortho-K, we saw a scleral lens fitting, we saw a post-concussion, vision therapy, and she's like, don't you just see like any 60-year-old? We saw 2 7-year-olds, but they both had glaucoma.
Right.
And then we saw a guy who has a prosthetic contact lens. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is just an average day. This is what we do. Like, I don't get -2s that just get some vision distance.
Yeah. And again, for that optometrist that is really clinically focused, I mean, it goes to show the power of what an independent practice can look like. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, but that diversity of, exposure with regards to the things that you're treating, again, going to uni, you've got a healthcare mindset first and foremost, and to be able to deliver on that and to provide that service to the community, obviously, as an optometrist, I feel like there's almost nothing greater, I imagine. It would be just so fulfilling. And it sounds like that's the case for yourself as well, and for your team.
Yeah, it really is. It makes coming to work fun. And, you do hear talking to young optoms who are maybe stuck in a job they don't like, and they just burn out so quickly. Whereas I'm like, I love going to work, because I every day is different, and I'm thinking differently. You
probably don't even think of it as work, I imagine.
Yeah. And I remember when I first started, like, Norm would be seeing, he'd see, a +6, and then, then he'd see an esotrope, and then Nexo, and then a hard contact lens fit. And by the end of the day, I'd be like, oh my God, how have you done this? You're doing all of this stuff that's, it's its own specialty, and it's right. And it's like, after you do it for a while, you just get used to it. And thankfully, it probably took about 3 or 4 or 5 years. And then it's like, nothing phases me anymore. It's like, I've seen nearly one of everything before. And, enough of the common stuff that you're like, that's just another one. That's fine. I know how to handle that now.
Yeah. And I guess that instills a bit of confidence too with everything that you're doing, and that in turn, your patients are the beneficiaries.
Yeah. Yep.
You've mentioned post-concussion and neuro-optometric care, I guess, as well earlier and just now. How did you get into that area? And I guess, how does that area set the practice apart from the rest of the clinical work that you do?
Yeah, it's become my new little passion project, actually. And it all came about kind of with an interesting side story. ACBO were running a course on post-concussion stuff, and I was going to do it. And then I got really sick by having a brain injury. So I actually had a brain infection at the time that I was going to attend a course on brain injury.
How's the irony?
And it took me about a year to recover from that one. And then I had a couple of patients in the store who had concussions and other brain injuries. And I realized I had this connection with them now of being able to explain things like brain fog and the fatigue and these different things that you experience when you have a brain injury. And everyone is different, but there are some common trends. And I felt like I could just connect with them so much better than what I could before I had it. And so because I'd had that interest in it beforehand, I then, ACBO released a new course on it. And so I undertook that. And it's been the best thing that I have done. The course was fantastic, run by Evan Brown in New Zealand. And from there have really started, taking on more tricky cases of post-concussion. And I've never felt like I've been able to impact someone's life more than what I have in these cases. It's one of those ones, they're hard work, but you can get such reward out of them that, like, the amount of times I've left the practice like walking on air because I'm like, I've actually changed someone's life now.
That's awesome.
Is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I guess because you've had that experience yourself, in some capacity with that, it just makes it more relatable to what you're doing for them as well. And you can't really mimic that from that point of view. And it's that experience that's led you down that particular path.
I think so, yeah. And it's for people who have got a concussion, I think the hardest part is that you look fine. From the outside, you look fine. You can walk and talk and, you're doing everything. And so people treat you like you're fine until you can't do all of these things. And then they're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do these simple tasks that should be really easy?
Yeah.
And they get frustrated and people, they get sick of, trying to explain it. And so I think they really find it valuable that they can talk to me and be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's fine. Like,
it's almost like a mental health component to it all that sort of builds up over time and can affect them in different ways.
Yeah. And they don't have to keep re-explaining the same thing. I can't do this because I'm too tired, or going into the supermarket just makes me feel too dizzy or anything like that. I'm like, that's fine. I'm not going to make you do any of that sort of stuff. Now, thank God. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess from a business point of view, is it the same sort of thing with behavioural where you've kind of got to manage your time with regards to, okay, I want to provide this service, not knowing how the remuneration model looks like for that, but then also being mindful. And again, I don't know if glasses are a part of that, of the solution, but maybe it isn't. Do you have to manage that like you do with the behavioural side of the business?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one because the people who need your care are complicated. They take a long time to work with. And they're usually not working because they have problems. Yeah. And then you're often dealing with either like insurance or work cover or something like that.
Right.
So it's a tricky one to navigate. And again, the way I kind of balanced it, I basically said, I don't want to be doing this all the time because you'd drown in admin and it would mentally fatigue you. So again, I've set aside specific times where I go, this is where I deal with this. And I know that if I do it in this space here, so for example, I see my post-concussion patients when I do their vision therapy on a Wednesday morning because I know I have two other optometrists who can then generate cash flow, and then I'll just do the vision therapy then because it's just that's my passion project and it makes me feel good. Yeah. But I deliberately have said I only do it then because I can't be doing it the rest of the time.
Yeah, again, having that strategy behind it, I think is really, it enables you to deliver that service too. Because, if you focus on it too much and it's not viable, then the business could evaporate for and then you're not providing it at all. And so I think making that hard decision, or what may seem to be a hard decision, or maybe it isn't, I think it allows you then to carry on and focus on other aspects too, because it does sound like you're quite innovative in nature and curious, which is really motivating and inspiring. And, you're not afraid to try new things. And what I want to ask is, how did you develop that mindset? And I guess, what would you say to somebody that, is in a frame of mind where they're not willing to take that step and try something new and, and perhaps change the direction of the practice that they're working in, or that they own, or that they're a part of?
Yeah, I've been asked that before, and it's an interesting one. I think I have to thank my mum, actually. I think I have to do a throwback of she's always someone who's just like, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think she just drummed it into us from such a young age. She's like, if you want to do it, you can. And maybe she's just ingrained it so well that I have always felt like if I wanted to do something, as long as I put in the time and effort, I could do it. It was never a free lunch type thing. It was like, you have to work hard, but if you work hard, you'll be able to do what you want to do. And then I think also from Norm, I learned, he was like, you are so much better to try something and fail than not try anything at all. He's like, if you never do anything, you will never know what works. Yeah. And I think probably on top of that, I'm also a little bit like Dory from Finding Nemo. I'm like, oh, something shiny. And then that kind of gets my attention. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what could happen there.
Yeah.
And I think I just love efficiency of going, okay, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? How can I get busier? How can I generate more income? How can I help my patients more? So that's where, my staff thankfully through Norm and then through me, they've learnt that we don't sit still and do nothing. We have, meetings every morning, and it's usually like, let's try this today. Let's see what happens if we do that today.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah, and what I love about it is obviously, like you said, there's that curiosity component, that, new shiny thing, what's all this? But, the skill, I think, in it is to decipher whether that's worthwhile the time and the energy. And if it is, then you give it a go and it doesn't work or it's not right for you, like the castor eye test and all that sort of stuff. You sort of think, okay, well, let's pivot and change and let's move forward with something a little bit different. And I think that is a bit of a secret ingredient because, too many ideas can sometimes be overwhelming. And obviously it seems like you're good at handling that. But then more importantly, it seems like you're able to then convert that into a business operation or a strategy and then, ensure that it's a successful idea, not just for yourself, but for the business and for the staff and most importantly for your patients. And I think marrying that all together is a challenge, and it seems to be something that you've done really, really well.
I've definitely made many mistakes along the way. When I first started, I definitely had too many ideas and tried to implement them all at once. And through experience have learnt just to kind of dial that back a little bit. And I have kind of this huge list of things that I'm like, okay, these are the things I want to do, but I just have now learnt better ways so that I can communicate with my staff and make sure that we start something and actually finish it as opposed to starting it going, that looks great, training half the staff on it and then moving on to the next thing. So
I feel like I'm talking to myself when you say that because that's totally how I feel. So I totally understand what you're saying in that capacity. But it's a challenge.
Yeah, and it's something that I've had. I've definitely now planned things out, kind of going, okay, I'm going to implement it, but then what does it look like after I've implemented it, and how do we make sure we cement it in? So that's been my, over the last few years since I've taken over completely, kind of going, okay, I've got to make sure we actually follow these things through and we keep doing them rather than go, oh, we did that great thing for a month and then we changed and did something else.
Yeah, and I guess to wrap it all up, if you could offer one piece of advice for an independent optometrist or a team thinking about introducing a specialised service or just something on mindset and mentality, what would that piece of information be to the audience? Yeah,
I think find your passion and follow it. I think if you do that, you can't go too far wrong. And if you're because it's usually, I think in optometry, lots of people are planners. Like they got to have everything planned out. And I think make your plan, but just have it loose.
Right.
Don't say it necessarily has to be exactly this. Have a plan so that you feel comfortable of where you're going to go, but then just do it. And that's where you hear a lot of practices that have great ideas, but nothing ever sort of comes of them. And it seems like they just don't quite have that courage to take that step. And I think it's that mindset of, if I don't change, I'm getting left behind. So I think just taking that first step, have your plan, take a step, and if you love it, you'll make it work.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like, again, your story is so inspiring, and it seems like you're doing so many things and you seem to be, sort of doing it right from that point of view. So it's, it's a real credit to yourself and congratulations on all of that. Yeah, it's very inspiring and very empowering to hear from my point of view, and hopefully the audience too. If anyone wants to reach out to you and ask you a question or get some advice or sort of see other things that you're working on and what else you're sort of bringing to the market from that point of view, what's the best way that people can reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best is by my email, which is just adrian@icollective.com.au. Yeah, feel free to send me an email, get in touch. I'm always happy to chat, love chatting, especially to young optoms or people that want to do something different. I'm a pretty open book. I will tell you pretty much anything. That's something I used to hold my cards quite close to my chest, but something I learned from Norm is he's very open. He's just like, no, I'll tell you anything.
Yeah.
And I think I actually enjoy that a lot more. And yeah, it's really nice. It's like, oh, I'll share anything. I don't have too many secrets to hide. If I can help you enjoy your practice career a bit more, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, and I think that's a mentality that's super empowering too, because, from the conversations that I have, it is those conversations that change people's perspectives and I guess to an extent their lives with regards to what they're doing. And, one conversation of what you've been through, for example, and, the things that you do can really empower somebody that's thinking about doing something and how to, and if you're open to those conversations, I think, yeah, that's awesome. And we'll obviously include those details in the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out to Adrian and ask him a question on any of the things that we've discussed today, feel free to do so. And definitely interested in having you on again to talk about that acquisition sort of conversation and how you, forayed into the store and how you've sort of handled all that sort of stuff too, specifically. But Other than that, Adrian, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate your time and all your insights. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No problems. Thanks, Michael. It's been fun.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before we go, just a reminder about the OptiPro Roadshow in 2025. Whether you're a practice owner, manager, optometrist, dispenser, or student, there's something at the OptiPro Roadshow for you. So go to optipro.com.au to register. Hope to see you there.
Thank you for joining us on The Focused View, proudly presented by Opticare. It's been our privilege to share the insights and stories that resonate deeply with the eye care community. We hope today's episode has not only inspired you, but also armed you with the practical strategies and innovative ideas to help you enhance your practice and professional journey. If you found value in our conversation, we'd be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. And share this episode with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals like you and grow our community of visionaries. Stay connected by subscribing to The Focused View and visiting our website www.thefocusedview.com.au for additional resources and episode summaries. We look forward to your company again in our next episode. Until then, keep focused. I'm Michael Nasser. Bye for now.